Hi everyone, welcome back. In today's masterclass, we're going to be looking at the Celtic Cross reading in a bit of a deeper way. What I'm going to show you today is something that, well, I'm titling this masterclass Crosses, Paths and Ceremonies using ancient tarot layouts. And specifically, we're going to look at the Celtic Cross layout as the tarot layout that we're discussing today. The Celtic Cross and the idea of paths and path finding and path keeping ceremonies is one that I got curious about when I saw links between what ancient Celtic and Druidic and Gaelic cultures in and around the British Isles mainly seem to have been doing from an archaeologist's perspective with regard to ceremony and walking and path finding and path walking as important components of their ceremonies. And we actually see a lot of those ancient Celtic roots of path walking and ceremony come into things like ancient labyrinths that we'll find. And a lot of the sites, the sacred sites or the specific sites that had different energies and vibrational associations and empowerment potential, I guess I would say, became important for specific types of ceremonies. Different times of the year became important to do for specific ceremonies too, because different times of the year feel very different energetically. So all of these things I was seeing, the ancient Celtic societies and religions that are really considered pagan religions in the British Isles because they predate Christianity. Very, very simply, very essentially, that's an oversimplification if you're an academic anthropologist who focuses on religion or an archaeologist that focuses on finding evidence of ceremony and ritual and religion. That is definitely an oversimplification. But for the purposes of this tarot-based master class, I just want to really emphasize that we have found so much in the way of physical evidence, massive standing stones that are not only put into stone circles, as many people all over the world know about stone circles, and specifically the stone circles that are found all over the British Isles, predate Christianity by definitely millennia, any way you look at it through any theory or lens. Now, what becomes interesting in the British Isles is that there was definitely a knowledge base or a wisdom or a knowing, or at least a belief, a strong belief, in the later Christian and Judeo-Christian based religions and different churches that sprung up at different times and populated the British Isles in much later centuries and through to the present day. Obviously, we have the building of these immense Gothic cathedrals happen all over medieval Europe. And a lot of these sites, sacred church sites, village churches, all the way up to big city cathedrals all over the British Isles, were actually placed on the sites of earlier, more ancient Celtic, pagan, and possibly Druid cultures. And their religious sites, these very powerful energy sites in the British Isles, were then added to by the later cultures, even with Christianity, so that we see the walking of path in ceremony look very similar, whether the walking of a ceremonial path is done in a Christian church or a much earlier pagan ritual or ceremony from any prehistoric tribal civilization, actually, not just the ones in the British Isles, but anywhere. we see these links. We see the ceremonies looking very similar. We see the paths that are walked, if we map them out, having similar patterns that look the same. If you talk to someone who has studied sacred geometry, for instance, and the connection to religious ceremonies and rites and rituals and sacred geometry in these path walkings, all humans basically seem to have found the same ceremonial patterns that happen in what they actually walk through with their physical body when they're going through ceremony. It doesn't seem to matter very much where in the world you are. We have the idea that these basic shapes help our bodies vibrationally through ceremony and ritual to manifest things in the three-dimensional mundane world that we find ourselves in. So path walking as a part of ceremony has always been very important if you're interested in how to actually begin manifesting. So this is really the intersection. What I have discovered, what I have found, especially through studying the Celtic Cross Spread, which actually doesn't really have much to do with Christianity, if you understand what a Celtic cross really could be. Celtic crosses predated Christianity. Celtic cross designs and the knotwork patterns that are there and the cross shape predates Christian cultures all over Europe. We see evidence of the Maltese cross from way before Christianity, way before Christian times. So the cross as a shape that was important in ceremony, and here what we're going to be doing today is a bit of intuitive work, which feels like a ritual, and sometimes you can do big, larger ceremonies based off your ritual or intuitive practice. So we'll see the cross shape and we'll work with it in a few different ways that are really, as far as someone who has studied a meditation practice goes and knows about the effects of meditation on the human mind, brain, nervous system, brain waves, vibrational state. We know that working with these patterns that go around in a circular fashion, which is how we approach and really walk a path that is specifically laid out in a Celtic cross reading. This is how we go about doing that. We sort of go around a clock. So here in the Celtic Cross Spread, if you start to read the spread in more of a diagnostic and prescriptive sort of a way, which is something that I do when I read now in order to really get the best use out of the reading. I try to look for things that the reading is telling me are going on. That's the diagnostic part. And then the prescriptive part is, if I sort of envisioned the tarot as a very wise, universal wisdom doctor, sort of a force that I can turn to for good advice in my spiritual life and my practice and everything else about my life. What is the tarot actually telling me to do here? What is the tarot recommending? What is the tarot prescribing? A good tarot reading is one where you get realization, you get awareness and realization that helps you to raise your consciousness enough that you can make very well informed decisions because you have checked in with a more universal source of wisdom that is available to you when you do a good tarot reading like this. And that's the same for tarot readings as it is for a really good yoga practice or meditation practice or anything else that really helps to connect you to whatever you want to call source energy, universal wisdom, divine wisdom, God. And that energy can then, once you are connected to it, it can really infuse wisdom, good decision-making qualities, and just pure energy and love into your life in a way that can really light your life up. So when we see a tarot reading as a visual representation of a pathway that we can walk with our consciousness and awareness as we contemplate and go through all of the cards in a tarot reading, whether we're looking at those cards by ourselves or you're looking at them with a teacher or someone like me who's helping you to read your cards or has read your cards for you and is interpreting them for you. At a certain point, if you've had a larger reading done, you're going to be walking through all of the cards in that reading, and you're going to pay attention to one card more than others for a specific amount of time. And when you do this, when you draw your attention, you draw your gaze, you draw your awareness to any one of a series of 10 cards in this example where we're looking at a Celtic Cross reading, any one of those 10 you pay attention to, you're having a little bit of a different experience as you pay attention to that one card versus the next card and the card after that. So if you know how consciousness and vibration and awareness and attention really work, you'll understand right away. Even very Western scientific studies of psychology using fMRI scans and little nodes and electrodes all over a person's head to sort of see what part of their brain actually lights up when they're having different experiences that their eyes are presented images of. We already know, even through Western science, that when we do an experiment like that on any human, the visual stimulus, the image, whatever we are showing them a picture of, they have an emotional reaction to. They have a cognitive reaction to in many different ways. Their nervous system has a reaction just based on visual image. This all happens in such a tiny fraction of a second as far as our response time is to visual stimulus. As long as we're not looking at exceptional humans with different abilities or they're not sighted, they're blind, and then this visual stimulus thing probably won't work quite the same way. But, it's amazing how well the human body compensates with whatever sense is available to us to get an enormous amount of information through in a fraction of a second. What this information is when it comes in really can't be described as anything other than your subconscious, amazing brain, your full body, mind, and spirit connected, having the best, most immediate response. And this is why you will find psychologists who try to do therapy work with people where they're talking to them and sort of talk and couch therapy, I suppose some people would call it, would also draw on this a lot because, many people that I know, including myself, have been in situations like that where the therapist has said, okay, I'm going to ask you a question and I want you to pay attention to what? The first response that you get. The first words into your head, sometimes they'll say. What they're looking for is they're really kind of trying to train you when they do that sort of work with you into a practice that looks very similar to an intuitive or yogic or meditation practice where we allow ourselves to rise above and get a higher perspective on our lives, and that gives us a vantage point where we can have the experience of being not the person in our ego sense of self who is having all of these experiences and dramas and ups and downs of life as a human. In this elevated state, we can observe our lives as humans, and in that way we allow ourselves to have an experience of being elevated consciousness. Something more than the actual just reality behind your eyes of being in your body, walking your experience, your day-to-day life through with the people in your life. Beyond that, you can become the observer of your life. And from that point, you can find peace. You can find a place where the drama isn't there because you're not really in the trenches or on the ground level of the situation. From this place, you get more than situational awareness. You get awareness that you can bring in and infuse your consciousness with from a much higher perspective. And this higher vantage point, this higher perspective, is something that a lot of my very favorite teachers have talked a lot about. And I bring it into yoga teachings as well as tarot readings, just for those of you who are interested. Very, very similar thing going on here. If you work with a spread, a larger spread like the Celtic Cross reading, in a way that basically you are doing a sort of yoga, if you ask me, when you are doing an intuitive reading. There are many different yoga practices. There are many different schools of yoga, schools of thought and philosophies. And they all are yoga because yoga comes from this Sanskrit word. The root of the word there is a word. It's a little Sanskrit word called yuj. Is actually the root of the word yoga. Yuj is also the root of the word yoke, which is what we would do to an ox and a cart, or a horse and a cart. We would yoke that. So it's a harnessing, a connecting in this way that allows the cart to harness the energy of the ox. Right? So if you can imagine your human body as the cart energetically, what are you yoking it to? What are you connecting it to? What are you joining it to in order to infuse your flesh and bone and skin and circulatory system and endocrine system and organs and brain? What makes all of this stuff actually go? What infuses all of this body matter with life? Well, it's something called life force. Well, in a similar way, we can connect to this elevated state through yoga practices, energy practices, breathwork practices, meditations, visualizations. All of this work can help our energy body to open and connect to this divine source of energy and wisdom. And once we are there, when we are then energetically connected to our highest perspective, then if we walk the path of the tarot reading here, the Celtic Cross reading, what we can do is we can work with and experience every single one of the images that show up in this reading in a sequence. If we know how to interpret and work with the experience that visually we can then observe in ourselves, what begins to happen is that you are observing in real time your reaction to each of the images in your tarot card reading. And as you are observing each of these images, you are also aware. You are also in that point, that place of highest perspective. So you are an observer watching your reactions to each of these images. But even here, with just the cards and our mind and our contemplation of each of these images in turn, if you see each of these cards as a different sequence of, well, the whole layout of cards is a big sequence, and each of the individual cards, it can be likened to a different posture, a different asana that you're going to move into and move out of in whatever unique way feels appropriate for you today. So you can have a very different experience of any of the 78 cards that show up in any of the different positions based on how you walk through this sequence, how you walk through card by card, your contemplative practice. What are you going to be doing internally with the thoughts, feelings, emotions, energies that you notice coming up when you gaze at each of these cards? What are you going to think about when each of those cards comes up? What are you going to do with those thoughts? What are you going to transform about that. You've seen the diagnostic part of the reading that we were talking about earlier, and now we have to decide what to do with that information. We have to look for the prescriptive part of the reading. This is the part where maybe you can see that the tarot has a message for you with a certain card showing up and your reaction to that. And based on all of this information, you can then come to a conclusion about what to do. This is the prescriptive part of the reading. Byron Katie would say at this point where I'm saying, okay, what are you going to do about it? She would say, okay, now turn it around, right? If you are going to use the tarot or your yoga practice in a way that can truly transform your life, the secret is in bringing so much awareness into those points in your life, those points in your day, where you can rise to this highest consciousness to decide what the best decisions and choices are for you, for your life today. Then what you realize you're doing is you're really setting the tone for your entire day. You're setting the energy up for your day. You're deciding basically what you are then choosing to go create in your day. You can decide what to manifest, what to create today. It is a very empowering thing. Now, where the tarot as a contemplative practice fits in there is it allows you an opportunity to come up to that highest perspective for your day. Survey everything. Survey your reactions. Survey your emotions and your feelings, as well as what just looks the most important on the schedule or who's nagging you the most to fulfill your obligations to them. It allows you to look at you first in your day, to fill your cup up first. And from this place of vibrational and emotional empowerment, our minds become clear, our hearts become peaceful. From this place of true connection, empowered, non-egoic connection to divine source energy, we as humans can transform, can heal, can shape our lives, can manifest life in our highest vision. But we have to connect with that highest vision every day in order to do that. So when we're looking at working with a tarot spread in a deeper way than just viewing it as a reading, like you could get a reading from me, and many of you will receive readings that I hope are very accurate, insightful, and all the rest of it. And readings are very important. But when you can actually start working with the wisdom that you gain in a tarot reading and bring it into a practice for yourself, a personal practice, this personal development practice can transform so much for you. The cross that we see in the Celtic Cross reading in so many ways, as far as sacred geometry goes, and if we were actually walking a path in a physical ceremony, which is possible to develop from a tarot card reading. One of my courses, one of my mastery classes and course sets are going to look at that physical body ritual and ceremonial work that we can do, that we actually move through with our bodies. But any cross in the mind can always represent what you are crossing over right now, what you are meeting, what you are crossing right now. So we have that going on to look at with the Celtic Cross reading. The other thing we have in the Celtic Cross reading is a perspective that shows us our past, our present, and our future in a couple of different cards. There's a root past card, a near past card, a present card, a card that represents the present, a card that represents the near future, and a card that represents the outcome as well. Then, and this is one of the most beautiful things about the Celtic Cross reading, is it doesn't just leave us there. And that's what makes the Celtic Cross reading such a perfect reading to do a deeper study on, that really is going to take the tarot beyond a forecasting reading of destiny, for you, or life purpose, and give you something that you can actually work with in terms of your own personal development process as well. And these 4 cards over on the right hand side here, outside of the actual basic Celtic Cross reading, these are the cards that really and truly are all about our own personal development, our own personal transformation. And they go from the lowest card here to the highest card, because the card represents something that you can very clearly see in a lot of ways as a lowest to highest, in terms of awareness, consciousness, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. All of that we can see conceptually as good reasons to grow from lowest to highest. And concepts like growing. A tree grows from very short to very tall as it develops and matures, right? And so do people. We grow from very short, little, cute, chubby toddlers into fully developed, usually not quite so cute adults, right? And so we have this process of going from low to high show up wherever we are in our physical experience. So it makes sense when we get to these last 4 cards here that we are going to view them and walk this path from the lowest card here up towards the highest. On the lowest card, in the lowest position of the Celtic Cross reading, we have a card that typically is said to represent your attitude, or the person whose reading it is, the client, the querent, their attitude. So I'll call this card the Attitude card. And this is a card in the reading that when you look at it, whatever's showing up here, and you know that this is what the tarot is showing you as your attitude, what this means is your highest consciousness has this perspective, on your filter. It's a really interesting card. If you actually count the cards and you don't use a significator in the Celtic Cross reading, so therefore it's a 10-card reading, not an 11-card reading with a significator card. Significator cards I'll go into in another masterclass another time. It's a 10-card reading here. We've got the first 2 cards as the first central focus card and the crossing card, and then the card on the bottom is the route past the near card. Near past card is card 4. The present card is therefore card 5. The near future card, at about 3 p.m. on that little clock there, is therefore card 6. The attitude card here is card 7. And that number is quite significant in so many ways. It's like we've had our experience and now we have made up our minds about what we are going to do about it, how we're going to feel about it, how we're going to walk the rest of our life is determined by our attitude. The number 7 obviously also corresponds to the opening at the top of the head, which corresponds to the crown chakra vibrationally, energetically. How open is your crown chakra is a representation that has a lot to do with the number 7, because a lot of people see the 7th chakra as the crown chakra. And the 7th chakra here is also, if you were to view it the other way, where this would be the lowest possible chakra in the human central 7 chakra system, then this would be the root chakra. And this represents our grounding, our foundation for whatever's going to happen next is because of our attitude, what we are open to, where our consciousness is at, what our consciousness connects with. All of this is to do with the number 7. So very interesting placing here of many of the positions in the Celtic Cross reading for so many reasons. And we'll go into that more in a course that I want to share a little bit more about with you here in a minute. And if you enroll in the course in a minute here today, you're going to actually have the opportunity to get a lot of in-depth training via masterclasses like this one in the Celtic Cross Spread, so that you are really going to have such a mastery of working with the Celtic Cross Spread specifically as an advanced intuitive practice for yourself and clients. If you work with people that you think intuitive insight would benefit and you'd like to work with the tarot readings in a really unique way, this advanced tarot class is going to be able to take you all sorts of different places, because you can use it as insight into the best ways to build ceremony for people. If you're someone who helps people with ceremonies, a celebrant, or someone who officiates ceremonies. That can be something useful for yourself, for other people. In a lot of ways, I'm working with a lot of yoga teachers right now that are interested in working with the tarot to decide what to put into their yoga class for the day for whatever group of students they're working with. They want to know something intuitively they want to connect vibrationally to their students and make that class really powerful for that specific group of students. Working a little intuitive practice into the time right before you go and lead a yoga class, or right before the time you go and work on someone, if you're a bodywork teacher, a massage therapist, or a bodywork technique is in your future with a client. Doing a little bit of intuitive work can add so much there. The process you go through here with these last 4 cards can be seen more as a perspective, and they can really influence sort of more of the overall big picture, rather than point to any one specific thing that is about to happen or has happened or should be happening one way or the other. The attitude card here is a great card to look at. For yourself, and if you're working with clients, for all of those reasons. Now, the environment card is kind of just good to know, no matter what you're doing. The environment card is card 8. If you can tap in and work with your environment in a way that you can befriend your environment, the numbering of 8 here on the environment makes a lot of sense. If your relationship with your environment, and this includes people as well as experiences that you're having in your environment outside of your flesh and bone and your skin, there's an external world. What is your relationship with that external world? Any number of factors in your external world can show up if they're important in this card that is numbered 8. 8 in the major arcana, in the sacred numerology that's associated with a set of cards in the tarot. Number 8 connects with ideas of strength and fairness and justice in a lot of decks. And strength and justice are things that everyone really is entitled to. They're sort of human rights. If you're going to be out in the world, if you need to interact with any environment at all, you need strength and you need fair treatment, right? So this environment card carries all of those things in it. You could just talk about the environment card if there was a lot in there. But you go into that card, and what is the lesson there? Well, it's a lesson that is in front of you, so that in many ways you can discover what your strength in your environment is. You're also, quite honestly, going to very often discover some weaknesses in your environment. Whatever they are there, we observe them, and we can then transform them. We can, as Byron Katie would say, turn it around if we just know very clearly what that environment is. A tarot reading can provide a lot of clarity on things like that. Really quickly, let's look at the hopes, dreams and fears card and the outcome card, which are cards 9 and 10 in a Celtic Cross reading. Hopes, dreams and fears, the internal work that's also symbolized by the number 9 in the major arcana. The major arcana card in the tarot that carries the number 9 is the Hermit. That's his traditional name. And he's all about returning to that inner knowledge, that knowledge of self, know thyself. That is really what's going on in card 9. In card 9 in the Celtic Cross reading, we say that this card represents how to address our hopes, our dreams, and our fears. So it's all about our internal environment, our internal experience. And so that card is a number 9, and that makes a lot of sense too, because of all of the things that number 9s are usually about. Finally, with card number 10, 10s are always about completions, so it makes absolute sense that the 10 here is the representation of the outcome in the Celtic Cross Spread traditionally. And the outcome card shows you so much about the situation. It's very often the first card that I address, because usually especially if I'm doing a reading for someone else, they want to know what's going to happen. They desperately need some information about
about what is coming up for them next with whatever their reading is about. It doesn't matter if they're dealing with a broken up relationship, or their kid going off to college, or they're about to have a baby, or they're about to inherit $1 million, or they're about to lose everything. They want to know what's coming up. They really do. So very often I will look at the outcome card, this card 10 first, because it's a 1 and a 0. It's a good way to sum up the reading. It's a good way to summarize the reading. And it's also a good focus to look at when we're introducing the reading. Because when we know what the outcome is, or we understand what the best outcome can be for a person if they handle a situation in the best ways, from their highest order perspective, their soul level perspective, what's the best way to handle a thing. This is all 10-ness. This is all stuff that has to do very much with the number 10 if we've studied numerology. It also has to do with completions. Beginnings, endings, completions are all there, with the 1, the 0 making up the number 10. So looking at the outcome card first, especially if the outcome card looks really great, can be very reassuring, and it can set someone at ease in a reading. It can help them to relax, and really having that bigger picture perspective of what the outcome is be something really great, and being told that up front can ease a lot of anxiety. And when you ease someone's anxiety, whether you're doing a reading for yourself as part of your own personal vibrational practice, or if you're doing something for someone else, easing anxiety then allows our brains, our minds, our bodies, our energy systems to get out of any sort of anxious fight or flight-ish feeling response that we might be having. And when that fight or flight stuff dies down, we relax and our minds open, and we absorb more information. We become sponges for what our intuitive senses are telling us. And that is a really great place to be. It's obviously a much better place to be if you're having a reading. So for all of those reasons, I actually very often look at card 10 first and last, just to sort of bring a reading full circle. So that, in a nutshell, is some of the ways that you can really look at a Celtic Cross reading, in so many ways that you can do more with it than just a reading. You can do ceremonies. You can follow a path that can truly be very transformational for you or for other people that you're working with. If you want to go deeper with your readings and your intuition and the tarot with me, I've got a really important opportunity to share with you. Now, if you've ever had a really difficult decision to make in your life, and most of us have, you're probably really going to resonate with what I'm going to say next. When people are up against really difficult decisions in their life, I've found that mostly people tend to do one of two things. First of all, people try to avoid making a decision by somehow finding a way to randomly choose what to do. The second thing that a lot of people do is they actually avoid making a decision altogether. They completely procrastinate on the entire choice, hoping that something is going to change so that they don't have to make that decision for themselves anymore. But the thing is, it's usually a much better idea to make a really informed decision, a choice, and move on. Tarot isn't a religion, and it doesn't interfere with any religion either. It's simply a way of tuning in to your deepest connections with the universe. Imagine what your life would be like if you were never in doubt as to which road to take in your life at all. Questions about relationships, boyfriends, girlfriends, marriage, whether someone's actually going to ask you to marry him or not. Job, career, work-related decisions are always very important. Whether to stick with the job you've got or look elsewhere. For thousands of years, people have looked to the tarot for answers to these really important sorts of questions that everyone has from time to time in their lives. The tarot can give such deep, accurate answers to questions like this for everyone that it's really kind of fascinating why tarot isn't more readily considered as a technique to help you make important decisions. This is basically because there was a time in almost every culture, anywhere you look in the whole world, where mystics studied how to draw near to the divine wisdom of the universe. We find mystics had roots in all sorts of different philosophies: Hinduism, Judaism, Islam,
Native American spirituality paths, Aboriginal spiritual paths, Christian cultures. We find deep teachings coming from all of these paths, but the powers that were actually in control at various times in different parts of the world didn't trust mystic wisdom, and very often persecuted mystic teachers and oracles. They sentenced them to death, they burned them, they banned their books, and they tried to stamp out their teachings. So it was ultimately decided that the best place to hide the secrets of the tarot was actually in plain sight in the form of a deck of 78 cards. And the tarot is a way for the universe to talk to you. When they were hiding their wisdom in the deck of tarot cards, the mystics had to make sure that the message survived, so they cloaked the tarot in mystery. An uninitiated person sees only a simple deck of cards here, but someone who's received the secrets of the tarot can actually tap into the energy and the messages held in each of these 78 cards, which we sometimes call keys. And there are patterns and spreads that you can do with these cards that reveal your past, your present, your future, all sorts of things about your love life, your financial future, and your true happiness. They can literally help with any problem. And so for many years now, I've been teaching people how to read the tarot. It's actually quite simple once you're taught the patterns and the coding of the cards. When I teach, people usually ask me if they can actually get a reading from me, and usually when I don't have a program to enroll people in, I have to say no. I have to refuse private personal readings for a couple of reasons. The first reason is basically because it does take time to actually do a personal reading, and I've got quite a busy schedule with teaching, and I also have a family, so I don't have very much time in my typical week for readings. And secondly, when I do a reading, not only do I give the reading over, but I also connect to the person on a very deep energetic level in order to get a meaningful reading through. So usually there just simply isn't a place to do readings unless I enroll people in a program. So now what we're going to be doing is we're enrolling people in a program where you get an ongoing connection with me while you learn, and yes, you do get a personal reading included here. So what we're doing is for the first 35 enrollments here, I'm going to flat out give you a full Celtic Cross reading, that's a 10-card reading, for much less than the cost of usually what ends up being a $250 reading session for most of my students. And you get this reduction in the cost of the full reading when you enroll in my current Tarot Mastery group. So let me explain to you what's entailed in this enrollment, because I think it's going to become really popular. The Tarot Mastery Group is a group of students who are studying my Tarot for Beginners course, but would like to take their learning to a much deeper level by going one step further after they're done in Tarot for Beginners. They're the group that gets to stick around for more advanced work, and they get the full Celtic Cross 10-card reading from me, along with becoming a new member in the Advanced Tarot 201 course. Now, in this course, you're going to get to create a new hands-on style of course with me, because the entire course is a series of in-depth example Celtic Cross readings, all with different decks for different people and different questions. You're going to be able to look over my shoulders here while I analyze and interpret and explain everyone's Celtic Cross reading. You'll have over a dozen example classes included in this course, and everyone's reading, when it becomes a video-based class in this course, is anonymous for this group class. This is really the best way to master doing intuitive readings for other people, by seeing real-life readings being done and explained to you by a master reader. And remember, this is after you already have the background of a complete Tarot for Beginners course. You get to access Tarot for Beginners instantly when you enroll here today, and you also have lifetime access to that entire course. By the end of the series of courses here, Tarot for Beginners and Advanced Tarot 201, you're going to have the confidence and the skills you need to really soar as a powerful intuitive reader into your future, whether that's a future where you see yourself doing intuitive readings for other people or simply just for yourself. Let's go ahead and summarize everything that you're going to get in this package of assessments and readings and classes when you order this $147 set here today. First of all, you're going to be saving over $700 if you add up the individual value and usual retail pricing of every class and video and personal reading and group example reading lecture that's included in this package. You'd actually be paying more like $700 for everything. Today, you're going to be paying just $147. That includes the complete Tarot for Beginners course. It includes your complete personal Celtic Cross reading, which is just for you from me. It includes the complete Advanced Tarot 201 course, which is essentially everyone's Celtic Cross readings taught and kind of worked into example classes of these readings for you about a dozen times. This is absolutely the best way to master the tarot, by seeing these example readings done. You'll also be mastering a very useful spread there, the Celtic Cross Spread. Once you're done with your beginner's trainings, all of those advanced trainings are yours. You're also getting the complete Destiny Discovery package here, which is a personality key assessment and masterclass, a calculation of another set of cards that are important to you based on your birthday called your Destiny cards, and there's a masterclass to go along with that Destiny card calculation as well. And these two master classes and these really important pieces of information about your personality keys, which are major arcana cards from the tarot, along with your destiny keys, they're going to help you understand your destiny and your own personality in a deep way, along with the ability that you get after doing the Destiny Discovery package for yourself of how to calculate and assess these key types and key arcana types for others in your life too. So you're going to be able to understand other people using these same techniques. Now, in addition to all of that, I'm also gifting everyone who enrolls here today a bonus gift, and this is going to be a complete healing guidebook of affirmations to accompany you in your tarot learning. In the guidebook, I've created a specific consciously languaged affirmation for each one of the 78 tarot cards. With this guidebook, which is yours to download as a handy PDF, you're going to be able to find a great affirmation to work with the energies of any of the cards that might come up for you or someone else in a reading. It's a very empowering set of affirmations that I call the Tarot Healing Guidebook, and that guidebook regularly sells for $55 all by itself. So if you're ready to get everything here, including that complete personal reading from me for just $147. All you're going to want to do is find the Buy Now button page, which is somewhere below this video on this page, and click through on it. That's how you're going to enroll and secure your spot. When we fill all of the 35 spots that we actually have available this week, we're going to have to take this Buy Now button here away. We're going to take it off the page and you'll no longer see it there once we're full. I hope you can join us. Just $147 for everything included here today is such a great deal. Thanks so much for your time, and I hope I get to read for you very soon.